whilst there are a lot of small development spaces in the Linux world, I think it's fair to say that one of the biggest is Freedesktop.org. So big, in fact, that if you're actually using Linux, I find it basically impossible to believe that you're not using at least one of the projects under this banner. Of course, there are things like Xorg and Wayland, but then there's GStreamer, libinput, FreeType, both Pulse Audio and Pipewire, and also Mesa. If somehow you're not using any of these projects, let alone all of the other projects that you probably don't recognize by name but are very, very important, I guess let me know down below. Now, it's not the case for every free desktop project, but a lot of the development is done on the Freedesktop GitLab. But they're in a bit of a bind, a bit of a pickle, a bit of a... I didn't think this through the entire way. So currently the hosting is provided and sponsored by a company known as Equinix. And this is a bit of a problem because as of November 2024, this was announced. Equinix to close its Metal IaaS offering in 2026. So this is their bare metal server offering, as they'd like to focus more on cloud, big expansion, VPSs, and things like that. And look, if you're in a space where you have to compete with Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, all at the exact same time, I can see how you might want to restructure your business to make it so you have customers. So with that restructuring comes a restructuring of who they are supporting, and this is on the Freedesktop GitLab. This, I don't know why it's in green. Green is usually used for like a positive announcement. This feels more like a yellow or a red situation. Equinix is shutting down its operations with us on April 30th, 2025, which is before they're completely shutting down their metal offering, but whilst it's annoying that it's sooner than that, it makes sense because they're supporting them and you probably want to deal with that stuff before fully shutting down the program. They have graciously supported us for almost 5 years, but all good things come to an end. Given the time frame, it's going to be hard to make a smooth transition of the cluster to somewhere else, TBD. Normally this would be to be disclosed, but in this case I think it makes a lot more sense to say to be discovered because they're not entirely sure what is going to happen next. More on that a bit later. Please expect in the next months some hiccups in the service and probably at least a full week of downtime to transfer GitLab to a different place. All help is appreciated. Now, in the immediate term, this may seem very concerning because there is a lot of very important projects being developed on this platform. And yes, being down for a week or so isn't that big of a deal, but it is really annoying and nobody wants to do it. And a lot of people, they spend a lot of time working on these projects. Some people get paid to work on these projects, and just having that downtime is really, really annoying. You're not able to deal with pull requests and issues and things like that. You can obviously still write code locally. It's Git. It's not a centralized system, but it makes it a lot harder to collaborate with people. But if we look back at the history of this GitLab, this is not the first time they've had issues with keeping hosting going. Hi, Editing Brodie here. Before we get into that, I just want to add that this is also a problem over on Alpine Linux as well. It is the exact same problem. It's related to Equinix Metal. I could have done a separate video on it, but it's pretty much the exact same topic. I'd say pretty much the exact same stuff, so I felt like adding it here instead. I will leave this link in the description down below if you want to go help them out, all that fun stuff. Yeah, go and do so. Now back to the regular video. Let's go back to February of 2020, GitLab.ft.o, Financial Situation and Impact on Services by Daniel Vetter. The good news, the GitLab is very popular. The bad news is modern development tooling, CI integration, all that fun stuff, turns out a lot more expensive to run than just hosting code. Who knew? For 2020, they were expecting a total hosting cost of 75,000 USD, going up to possibly 90,000 the following year. Now, this being an extrapolation, it may not have been that much, it may have been a little bit more, it's really hard to say, but either way, 75,000 was already a bit too much to handle. But if you took out all the fun CI integration stuff, it would only total $30,000 USD, which is still a lot, but it's something they could afford. Assuming that we want cash flow reserves for 1 year of GitLab.fd.o without CI support and a trimmed XDC, and assuming no sponsor payment meanwhile, we'd have to cut CI services somewhere between May and June this year. The board is of course working on acquiring sponsors, but filling a shortfall of this magnitude is neither easy nor quick work, and we therefore decided to give an early warning as soon as possible. Any help in finding sponsors for FD.o is very much appreciated. Thanks, Daniel. After all that went down, they switched over to Equinix, and then shortly after, Equinix started sponsoring the project, and things would be fine for the next couple of years. And then, well, we ran into the problem we see today. And as it currently stands, this issue has not been resolved and is currently sitting opened by Benjamin Tisouris? I don't know why I even try to read names sometimes. Equinix Sunset, future of GitLab.fd.o. First, I'd like to thank Equinix Metal for the years of support they gave us. They were very kind and generous with us, and even if it's a shame we have to move out on short notice, all things come to an end. Also, please keep the discussions here technical and not fueled by any hate. Equinix doesn't owe us anything, and the fact that they sponsored us for that long showed how dedicated they are to open source. And at least from what I've seen, the discussion has been pretty tame. People are just talking about the issue, talking about solutions to the problem, and if maybe they need to cut things down and things like that. So, as it currently stands, what are they running on? This is a pretty beefy GitLab cluster. So, they have 3 AMD EPYC 7402P and 3 dual Intel Xeon Silver 4214. And that's just the GitLab cluster. There is also the GitLab runners. This is 3 AMD EPYC 7502P and 2 Ampere Ultra 80 core systems. Whilst this isn't many total machines, this is a lot of compute power, and just in CPU costs, if you wanted to buy this yourself, just for the CPUs, this is $20,000 of hardware. That's not accounting for the rest of it. However, to be fair, with Equinix sponsoring the project, they did give them kinda overkill hardware, and they don't actually need $20,000 of CPUs to run this infrastructure. It's nice, it gives them a lot of room to expand, but it's a bit overkill. So with the move to something else, the admin here has a couple of wishes for what could happen in the future. A managed DB with replication, external S3 object storage, privately accessible Kubernetes behind WireGuard, enough room to separate the control plane and the worker nodes, Cloudflare or Fastly to keep the AI scrapers away before anyone says, oh, but use bots.txt. A lot of the AI scrapers just ignore that. They claim to not be bots. They don't respect bots.txt and just do whatever they want because it's free real estate. And this is the dev's personal opinion about what should be done next. A few years ago, GCP, that being the Google Cloud Platform, had an open source program and they gave us credits. They suddenly disappeared and we had to pay for the expensive service while working around the clock to migrate out of it. Equinix gave us 5 years of free data center, but now we have to move out of their DC with a 3-month delay, or we have to pay for what we use, and it's expensive. I personally think we better have FD.o pay for its own servers and then have sponsors chip in. This way, when a sponsor goes away, it's technically much simpler to just replace the money than change data center. So on Equinix, they were spending $24,000 per month. Obviously, they weren't paying for it, it was being provided to them, most of it being the expensive servers they lent us for free. Here on Hetzner or OVH, the servers are much cheaper, and it seems we should be able to have some more room for $10,000 to $15,000 per month. They provide S3 object storage, so that removes a lot of burden in the cluster. I don't want to give too low of an estimate, because otherwise we might end up in the same situation than 5 years ago. Holy crap, expenses are exploding, we'll have to shut down in 3 months. One person suggested, well, how about we just leave GitLab and go over to Codeberg? The issue there is people have built up a lot of CI around the GitLab CI, and changing that's just gonna be a massive nuisance and no one wants to do it. Then someone called Tom Halloway showed up. Hi friends, I'm with the AWS open source team and we've got an open source credits program, which is a very similar story to the Google open source credits program. If you'd like to investigate moving over to AWS, please feel free to reach out to me. We helped GNOME move recently. No stress if you'd rather go a different way. Thanks, Tom Spot Calloway, AWS open source team. P.S. I'll be at FOSDEM this weekend if you're there and want to talk it through in person. And initially he had left his email here, but one of the admins went and removed it because AI scrapers and all that fun stuff. And whilst this is obviously a good offer, it did lead to the expected comment. First, I'd like to thank Crossout Equinix Metal, AWS for the years of support they gave us. They were very kind and generous with us, and even if it's a shame we have to move out on a short notice, all things come to an end, which, you know, entirely possible it would happen once again. To which Tom replied, for what it's worth, AWS has been running this credits program for 6 continuous years now, and in that time, we have never asked anyone to move out on short notice or any notice. We have worked with folks who've had their costs accelerate unexpectedly to try to get them to a more predictable state, but we consider accepting people into our credit program as a one-way door. Obviously, I can't promise that past performance predicts future behavior, but I want to make it clear that our intent is to support our communities for the long term. We believe this is important, our customers depend on FDO, and so do we. If you think AWS is the best fit for your needs, I'll be happy to work with you. As Dan pointed out, the process is basically to make a cost estimate, a calculator, AWS, and fill out a form for us to review it. We also regularly have people take credits from us and partner with other providers, fastly, to build the best combined solution that is right for them, and we're okay with that too. And Benjamin certainly does appreciate the offer. However, he's still thinking with going with Hetzner because it's sort of unclear, firstly, the cost thing, and then they have a review process at AWS as well, so having to deal with that every single time would be kind of a nuisance. But hey, maybe that is the future they end up going with. Could it lead to the exact same problem they've had before? Yes, and that's also part of the reason why, you know, they don't necessarily want to do the whole, hey, we're being sponsored on this specific platform once again. After that, they had a flood of people with various levels of experience working at different companies, offering different solutions for things that could possibly be done, and I have absolutely no doubt that some sort of solution will be put in place. Whether it's moving to some small hosting company that offers them support, whether it's going to AWS, or whether it's going to have something like Hetzner and then having sponsors pay for that, rather than having the company themselves provide the hardware and creating the exact same problem again. The main issue is with the provided hardware, it allowed costs to balloon a lot more than they should because they were just providing the hardware, so hey, the hardware's there, might as well use it. This has happened before, it's gonna happen again, and it seems like they at least know that there is a problem here that needs to be dealt with, so whilst there may be some downtime temporarily, I wouldn't expect the GitLab to go away. I wouldn't expect people to have to go and move over to their own GitLab or move to GitHub or something else like that. It might just be a bit of a rough start to the year for these admins. And if this does happen again, hopefully they put some sort of contingency plan in place rather than waiting until the problem happens again and then scrambling to resolve it. But what do you think? Do you think they're going to get everything resolved? Do you think this is going to become a long-running, recurring issue? I would love to know. So, if you liked the video, go like the video. And if you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here. Check out the Patreon, Scribes, LiberaPay, link in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and host it on a Raspberry Pi.
Like this.